Hey, what's up guys, Thetcglover here, coming with another video today. Right, so you guys have been requesting it for absolutely ages, and I actually do have enough reason to present it to you now. The deck is almost finished, but I'm going to show you my Raccoon deck. If you have a look at decks that Raccoon decks that have been doing well in tournaments, this deck is very similar, mainly because the reasonings that they've shown behind why they pick certain cards completely justified. There's nothing really much I can change. I mean, the deck is almost perfect, but there is a lot of things like if the meta changes and special summoning becomes a big deal, then fitting in Maxis, for example, is probably going to be a better option to put in the main, for example. I will go through the deck right now and I'll explain my choices, and hopefully I can justify everything to an extent. So let's get started on it. So anyway, 3 Pompokos. Obviously it is Raccoons, so we're going to play 3 of each. Gets yourself a free 10-10 in defense mode, sets up a lot of good plays. It is a free monster, by the way. That 10-10 does let you actually do a lot of crazy stuff. So getting to that 10-10, obviously it's quite slow in the sense that it sets you back a turn, but at the same time it's just perfect. Like, the restriction that you can only special summon beast monsters isn't really a restriction. It's just kind of there just so that you keep it in archetype specific. But realistically, it's just a fantastic card. You want to see it as early as possible. You want to see it with Obedience scored. You can start doing some pretty nutty plays with that. So that's great. Yeah, so free 10-10. It's the core of your deck. You want to get to this card as fast as possible. You can even set this card set 4, and your opponent has to run into it. You can get yourself some pretty crazy stuff. You can do a lot of different plays with this card. It's really good. You have to play 3 of each, basically. 2 Calentosa. It's horrible to see when you open up with 2 of these, but it doesn't mean that your game is completely lost, because there are ways to get it back into your deck, or there's ways to just set it and hope your opponent could just not get rid of it for a turn. So Calentosa is okay. It's just if you do have it in your deck, it's fantastic with 10-10. You can just pop, summon Sandayu, and then you can do some crazy stuff. So cool. For our one-offs, we have Elephant. It's the tuner that gets you Naturia Beast, it gets you anything really. That's kind of how it is. Wind Up Kitten. Wind Up Kitten is amazing, just bounce stuff back, it's great. We have Tree Otter and a Raikou. Tree Otter boosts up stuff. You can take out Tree Otter and put in something else, because it's sometimes good, sometimes it's not. But it does let you boost things up, and it keeps your token higher than your opponent's monster, so that's always quite nice. And Raikou is just for extra popping, but the fact that it's light it prevents you from doing some stuff, but ultimately as the attack, flip it up, destroy something, you always keep yourself 1 card ahead of your opponent. The reason why I won one-offs, which is justified by the deck that I've kind of net decked but changed things slightly. The reason is because Obedience scored. You need to have as many of these one-offs as possible that are actually decent, so that when you do Obedience score, you can actually Obedience score multiple times in one game, because it is that kind of card that changes the game. You need to have as many targets as possible. I have 6 targets, I believe, so I will always have something to special summon, and that's always great. And for our non-beast related stuff, we have a Beast King Barbaros. You go Obedience score, summon 3 Tribute Barbaros, and they're like, oh wow, okay. If you're gonna, the next format, Sylvans and Mondolce will be really big decks, and both of them have a similarity in which they commit to the field. They really do commit, so you really need to think, how am I going to wipe out their board in one fell swoop? And Beast King Barbaros kind of does that, so it makes sense to run one, especially when you have free cards to tribute it right off the bat. No worries there. And obviously you can go Obedience scored, summon Elephant and 2 other cards, summon this Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Tree, and send it to the grave, and you have 2 monsters left. You make Sandayu gets a 3100 token, so you have 7,200 damage on the board in 2 cards. So that's always a great way to finish your opponent off right there. We also have Thunder King Ryo, really fantastic card. This deck does not search whatsoever, so you might as well run one of these. It's a great stun card. You can do Thunder King set 3 or 4, and they're like, oh wow, okay. It does completely kill some decks, and some decks have to neg themselves to get it off the board. So it's a really fantastic card, and I'm hoping it will go up to 2 at some point, because it is just a great card. And we have 2 Veilers. I actually run 3 Fiendish Chain as well, but because there's so much negation required to last in this format, you might as well run Effect Veilers, because you can make some really cool boards, so then your opponent tries to bounce your stuff back and stuff like that and try and break the lock. You can just Veiler them instead of having to resort to your face downs, which can get Gyoku'd, MST'd, stuff like that. So having it 2 extra negation cards is always really handy. Cool, so let's have a look at the spells. Yeah, so it's been modified slightly, even though everything's pretty much standard except for the last, like, a couple of cards left in there. Free obedience scored, you have to run free. They're going for like 4 or 5 each, and for good reason, because the card is absolutely ridiculous. The deck would not be able to exist in them, would not be even close to tier 2 or tier 1 for that reason if this card didn't exist. You want to get to this card as fast as possible, so having stuff like Upstart Goblin lets you get to this card. You can do some pretty great openings. Going first in Raccoons really does put you in a huge advantage. Unless you open up with a whole bunch of MSTs and you open up the nuttiest hand, then you'll be able to still do stuff. But Obedience Scored basically allows you to go and get free different beast types with different names that are level 2 or lower. Just get Elephant and some stuff, and you make some Synchros and Raccoons, Sandayus and things. Free MST because Fiendish Chain's a thing and everything. You just want to kind of MST as much stuff as possible. I never ever blind MST. It's just obvious that you flip up Sandayu. You flip up 10-10, and then they Fiendish Chain you MST, and they're like, oh wow, okay, and then you get Kalantosa. Kalantosa blows up the other back row, so you hit 2 back rows for 2 cards, and then you go and make a Raccoon Sendayu, and then just do some stuff from there. And you haven't even used up your normal summon yet. Typhoon is great. So, that's always good. 3 different rarity Upstart Goblins. I don't know why I have that, I just do. It doesn't really matter anyway. But yeah, use these to get a obedience score. And I want to talk about this card a little bit more after I've finished the profile. We have 2 copies of Forbidden Lance. I think I have another one somewhere. I just can't find it. It's fantastic. You usually use it when you summon Barbaros with 3 tributes. And then they go, oh, Fiendish Chain. And you go, no. And they're like, oh, wow. You just +5. Oh great. So against my Dolce Sylvans and all those decks that commit heavily to the field, you might as well just run Lance because it's really good now. You need it to stop Forbidden Lance and stuff like that and really push through. It is obviously a spell card, so when they trap stun attack, you can still have something to protect yourself. So that's how I kind of justify using 2 of them anyway. I was using Horn of the Phantom Beast in its place, but I realised it's a bit of a dead draw. They're both dead draws, but this one's less of a dead draw. Book of Moon and a Dark Hole. A lot of Raccoon players don't play Dark Hole. I don't know why. I mean, it's because people are like, oh yeah, you've got an established board, why would you want to Dark Hole your own field? Or then realise that you make a Raccoon lock where they can't be destroyed by card effects, and then you have Dark Hole, so you just Dark Hole your field and their field, and you don't lose your monsters, so you can still make like 2 1k beat sticks and then attack for 4,000 after you Dark Hold. So it just clears the path really. I mean, and sometimes they OTK, or they try to OTK but they fail, then you can just Dark Hole and claim the board back, because Obedience Score doesn't require your opponent to have a monster. You can just have no monsters, so you can Dark Hole the board, Obedience Scored, and then set up all over again without having to use up your normal summon. And Book 'em in, because you can flip 10-10 back down, and then they attack it. They attack 10-10 and face up after they've Fiendish Chained it. You Book 'em in, flip it down, attack again. So you can do some pretty great stuff with that. So now we're gonna have a look at the traps. The traps is it's a difficult thing to really. I've been thinking about how to do the traps for quite a while now, but I've just sort of decided on what I feel is the best idea in terms of speed and not negging yourself too hard. So yeah, Free Burst Reverse. This card actually pays 2,000 life points and special summon a monster from your graveyard in face down defense position. So you can go and get yourself a 10-10 like that. So they attack, and then you can go and get 10-10, but generally you activate it during the end phase because you want to set up for next turn. So you take some damage, you're like, fine, you Dark Hole, take some damage, whatever, bear, ta-la. And then during the end phase, you Burst Reverse, get yourself this draw, go and get this and do some shenanigans. It's really great. It's just that running 3 of them allows you to see it more often, and you think it'd be cloggy, but since you're using so many different methods, Obedience Scored and Pompoko, to get yourself 10-10 as fast as possible, and you also have Raikou, and you also have stuff like Beast King Barbaros to get back, and whenever you make a Synchro, you can get those back too. There are so many targets for this card, so running 3 means that you get to the opponent MSTs. You can activate this in response. It actually is chainable, which is something that makes it really, really good. So your opponent will believe it to be something else that can be MST'd, and you end up activating this. It is basically 3 extra Monster Reborns for this deck. So let's move on to the Fiendish Chains. 3 Fiendish Chain because the format is very monster effect heavy. You could run something like Divine Wrath, and then you could run Fabled Cerebral, or Cerberus, or whatever it's called. You could do that because then you get to discard with Divine Wrath and Special Summon for free, so you get a free Divine Wrath basically. But in this case, Fiendish Chain is really good. Obviously, it gets MST'd a lot, but when it doesn't get MST'd, your opponent's like, oh, great. So it can, like obviously you go Fiendish Chain, MST, and then you chain the other Fiendish Chain, and that's face down as well. So that's always fun to do. But generally, it goes off, and it's great. I was not really running these at the beginning, but I realized like 2 Mirror Force is pretty good. I don't know why I have 1 Spanish and 1 Italian one, but it's just kind of how it happened. So. Yeah, really good. It punishes bad players. It kind of like you go into a tournament and you don't expect these to go off very often because people are like, oh, I can read a Mirror Force from miles away, but then they still attack and then you Mirror Force and you get some great pluses. So it's really good. You can just set up your board and then they try and clear it and then you Mirror Force and they're this sort of like, you can win games straight up basically because of that. And then for our random stapley cards, we have Bottomless, Torrential, and Solemn Warning, because cards that stop summons is much more powerful than cards that stop attacks. So Mirror Force is good, it's just like, it's only good if you actually get to hit multiple cards, but you don't always expect to. Once they see 1 Mirror Force, then they will play conservatively and give you extra cards. They will be worried to attack with all of their monsters again, so they won't try and push. They will just try and like defense and attack and try and get you to bait out Mirror Force. And I'm just like, okay, fine, I've obedient scored, blah. So so that's always great to have these as well. They just kind of like blow up stuff. Torrential doesn't really go off too often because you do have an established board a lot of the time, so it doesn't just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything. But it is a last resort in case your stuff dies. You need to blow up the field to kind of protect yourself. For the extra deck, this is interesting because I haven't actually got a full-on extra deck yet. I think it's 13 cards, but I'm still debating on what to add to it. I think I might add like Formula Synchron and stuff like that. You can basically add whatever the hell you want to it. There is a download Magician missing, but my friend's using it at the moment, so I didn't want to wait on making this profile. So 2 tokens, because you're going to summon a lot of tokens all the time. I usually have 1 Gauze token because you generally want to give your opponent the impression that you're running Gauze. So you can just have the face up when you start your door like this. Oh, have a good door. And then they're like, oh, wow, you're running Gauze. Okay, must be a Gauze related Chaos Dragon E deck thing. And then you go in Obedient School and they're like, what the fuck? Herald of Pure Light. To use this you detach and you get a monster back from your graveyard, add it to your hand, and then you can put 1 card in your hand back into your deck. So what about if you detach, select Tantan, add it to your hand, and then put Kalantosa back into your deck, set Tantan? Why wouldn't you do that? That's just, makes sense. Gachi Gachi, it makes sure that your token that's summoned is always higher attack points than your opponent's monster, because obviously they have a Thunder King, Gachi Gachi, you attach for Sandai, you go and get yourself a token, and the token will be 2300 because of its Gachi Gachi's effect. So it's worth running 1 of them. And I run 3 Ronin Raccoon Sandayus. Really fantastic card. When you have 2 of them on the field, you can create a lot because neither of them can be destroyed. Obviously, Fiendish Chain blows them out, but to be honest, Fiendish Chain, you generally detach, they Fiendish Chain, and you just neg them. So, it's pretty good. And then obviously you can set MST, they attack thinking they're going to like, oh yeah, well, I'll make a passive play. And then you MST their Fiendish Chain and then it doesn't die, and then they're like, oh wow, I just wasted my battle phase, I could have done so much more. I've seen that happen so many times, and it's just silly. And for random synchros, we have Black Rose, Leo. Leo is very easy to go into, but I don't go into it too often because I only run 1 Beast King Barbaros, but to be honest I might run more just to see this card more often because it does win games single-handedly. Black Rose Dragon, you can go into it, but it's not very easy, and I kind of have it in there just in case you need to resort to using it. Mistbird Clausulus, use Elephant and 1 token to make it, so it gets over stuff like BLS and anything that's really a pain in the ass, and it negates the effects, so you can get over stuff like Spirit Reaper, cards that this deck would suffer to get over. So it fills that slot of cards which are difficult to get over, but you can just reduce it to 0, negate its effects, and kill it. So it's kind of got a place in the deck. We have Army Arm, fantastic. Army Arm is great. Just kind of like attach it, attack. It's great. You go into a lot because you can just do Tantan and Elephant. And Tantan Elephant also makes this, which is the card that you make a lot more often. Balmung, when it's destroyed by card effect, you can special summon a monster from your graveyard. So you can make it very passive play where you summon this and attack for 21, attack over Thunder King. You can do anything like that. So I believe that if it gets destroyed by Thunder King, then you can special summon from the graveyard, so that's always nice. For our 2 relevant cards, we have something like the Notoria Barkion. You don't go into too often because it is a dragon, so you can't Obedient Scourge straight into it, which would have been really great, but you can't. So Notoria Barkion is just, I don't know, it's just good. Like, you kind of go into it a lot now and again. It's a great card where you can just like make it and they're like, oh wow, I didn't know you could make it, and then you push and then they're like, oh wow, my trap cards are dead. So in a trap card heavy format like what we have now, it makes sense to do that, to have that card in there. And the last card is Notorious Beast. Notorious Beast is one of those cards where you go into it so often that your opponent eventually starts hating you. You can go Obedient Scored, make some really dumb plays. It's so ridiculous. I mean, I'm just going to go over what you can do with it. So alright, so one of the questions that I think that you're probably asking yourself when it comes to something like as obscure as Raccoons is, what is the most optimal hand? Like, how do you know when you've opened up the complete utter nuts? Okay, and now this is it basically. This is basically one of the best hands you could possibly open up with. Okay, and this is why, because you're going to end your turn with these two and a face down. Okay, so let's just go over. So you have a Sendayu, Notorious Beast, and you'll have a face down card as well. So you have the rest of your cards in your X. This is the card. This is your main deck, right? So okay, so you open up like this, and you draw into this. You're like, oh my god, just drew the nuts. So first thing off, you go and activate Obedient Scored, and you go and get yourself some cards. So you're going to get yourself any 3 cards, but one of them has to be Elephant, okay, because you need it to go into Notorious Beast. Right, so this is your field right now, and you've obviously got 5 cards left, and you have one card in your, or one card, hopefully you have at least more than one card in your deck. So this is it. So you've got 3. You got these cards, and you also have these cards. So now you go and make yourself a Sendayu. The reason why you do it in this order is because if you activate Sendayu's effect, which is what you're doing in detach, send to the graveyard, and you get yourself a token. If Sendayu gets Veiled, or you get Maxed, then you can sort of like avoid giving them extra cards by just making a second Sendayu instead. But generally you go like this, right? So they don't Veil you, then you're fine. So next up you activate Pompoko. You summon Pompoko, hopefully it's all on the screen. Yep, you summon Pompoko, and you go and get yourself a Tan, and you put it in defense mode because of its effect. So you just put it up there. And so now you have a 2, 1, 2. So you synchro all of these up, send them to the graveyard, send that token away. Just put the let's put the Tan there, and you summon the Notorious Beast. So at this point you've only used 2 cards in your hand, and you've also got a Sendayu, a face down, and Notorious Beast. So realistically, at this point, if you've got a whole bunch of trap cards, you might as well just go ahead and set them. The reason why I picked Burst Reverse is because at this point you also have a Tan in your graveyard. It's completely live. Although actually no, you wouldn't have one, but you'd be able to put a Tan instead of summoning something like Kalantosa or something like that. So that's always good. Basically, you can set that all of these cards like this, and your opponent can't MST, they can't Fiendish Chain or anything. Well, they can Fiendish Chain, but you wouldn't be able to MST or Fiendish Chain, stuff like that. So they'll be completely stuck. You know, if they activate any effect like Bear or Tenki, you can negate it with Beast. But generally, you know, you just got the perfect lock. I mean, they've got nothing they could do unless they dark hold. You still got it. Okay, so you have the field. That's great. So there's one other thing I want to show you, and it's talking about Upstart Goblin. Right, so the reason why we play 3 of Upstart Goblin is because we want to get to Obedient Scored as fast as possible. It cuts your deck down to 37 cards theoretically on your turn. You know, giving your opponent 1,000 life points is negligible, seeing as that you summon 3 tokens and you can just keep attacking for 1,000 all the time. So you can negate the 1,000 life points quite easily without having to do much. So okay, so we Upstart Goblin. Let's say you don't have an Obedient Scored in your hand. So you Upstart Goblin on your opening turn, and you increase your chances of opening up with this card. Okay, but that's the thing. There will be times where you've opened up both, and you'd be like, what's the point of Upstart Goblin? I'm just going to be drawing into extra stuff. It's like, yeah, you're drawing into extra stuff, but because of the fact that you can also have Pompoko, you have 3 of them in your deck, you might as well just try and draw it into Pompoko so you can open up with the same field that I just told you a minute ago. With this in hand, you can do crazy stuff. So like, but there's also a sort of thing about when do I activate it, you know? So if you actually have all of this in your hand, right, you also want to make sure that you open up with as many trap cards as possible. This is in your hand. You go Obedient Scored, and you take 3 different cards out of your deck before you activate Upstart Goblin, because that means that there is now 3 less monsters, because you don't want to draw into a beast basically, except for Pompoko and maybe Tan. Those 2 are okay, but the other ones are not really. You want to reduce the amount of cards in your deck before you activate Upstart Goblin, because that means that you can increase your chances of drawing trap cards or spell cards depending on what depending on your build. But Upstart Goblin, you have to make sure you activate it at the right time. So in this case, if you have this field and you have Poco in your hand, you might as well activate summon Poco, get yourself Tan, you know, just like you did last time. And then now that you've taken 4 different cards out of your deck, you then activate Upstart Goblin and increases your chance of drawing any trap cards, you know. So it makes sense to activate Upstart Goblin as late as possible after you've extracted so many beasts out of your deck, so you increase your chances of opening up great. Because I see some people going Upstart Goblin. It's like, no, you've got the hand already. You just need to make sure that you draw the right cards. So Upstart Goblin, you need to make sure you activate it at the right time, and that's why playtesting and analyzing percentages and maths and stuff like that will help you understand why Upstart Goblin at the right time is a lot more important in this deck than it is in other decks. So I think that's everything I wanted to show about this deck. There is a lot more to it. I mean, a lot of people play the Fabled Cerebral deck, the build. That's fine. It's just kind of like, I don't know how good it is, to be honest, because I've seen people play it and it's okay, but it's like, if you make a good push, you can make a Fabled Unicorn, and then you can make some great things, because if you have the same amount of cards as your opponent, then you can stop them from activating spells and traps and monster effects, which is great, but also it's a little bit inconsistent because Unicorn is a bit... it's okay. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I definitely want to do some more Death Row duels and and hopefully show you how my deck's faring now, because I have made some big changes over time and just kind of catered it to how I like playing it. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell me how you feel about the deck, and I hope to see you guys in a few days. So thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, the Thetcglover is out.